And the first story today is from the New York Times that Uber is investigating a breach of its systems and has taken some of its internal communications and engineering systems offline. Uber stock is down 5%. The company said on Thursday it was looking into the scope of the apparent hack of its network. Washington Post says the Uber hacker, who reportedly claims to be 18 years old, said they had breached the company for fun and might leak its source code in a few months. And then you'll have a whole bunch of baby Ubers everywhere very quickly. Security engineer says Uber hacker had access to its HackerOne bug bounty program. The hacker downloaded all vulnerability reports before losing access. Ah, so this hacker, there's a platform called HackerOne, and HackerOne is a platform. It's a middleman between companies and hackers, vulnerability testers, pen testers, penetration testers, and HackerOne um, has campaigns where you can try and penetrate, Uber approached HackerOne, which they did, and said, "Hey, we want to create bug bounties, as they're called, for people to find vulnerabilities in our stack." Okay, great. So go crazy, and if you find something, we'll give you awards of different amounts based on how severe the vulnerabilities are. Okay, great. So you've just invited a whole bunch of hackers to come hack your stuff and get paid if they find something. Lovely. So that occurred, and the vulnerabilities were found and are kept somewhere in HackerOne's databases. This hacker found the vulnerability list, so was able to hack into Uber uh, in many different ways. And that's what that article says. So the next one is that the White House releases a comprehensive framework for crypto regulation, outlining the recommendations of various federal agencies after 6 months of study. And the White House's recommendations are built on many months of wide-ranging research across the digital asset sector. And the White House put out a fact sheet. The White House releases first ever comprehensive framework. CNBC is reporting that Biden White House just put out a framework on regulating crypto. Here's what's in it. Okay, let's have a look. What's in it? Let's crack that puppy open. It says it outlines the ways in which the financial services industry should evolve to make borderless transactions easier, as well as how to crack down on fraud in the digital asset space. The new guidelines follow an executive order issued in March in which President Biden called on federal agencies to examine the risks and benefits of cryptocurrencies and issue official reports on their findings. Fighting illicit finance. One section of the new framework on crypto regulation focuses on eliminating illegal activity in the industry, and measures proposed appear to have real teeth. Quote, the president will evaluate whether to call upon Congress to amend the Bank Security Act. The president is also looking into whether to push Congress to raise the penalties for unlicensed money transmitting, as well as potentially amending certain federal statutes to allow the Department of Justice to prosecute digital asset crimes in any jurisdiction where a victim of those crimes is found. The next steps is the Treasury will complete an illicit finance risk assessment on decentralized finance by the end of February 2022. So in 5 or 6 months from now, and an assessment on NFTs by July 2023. So the jury is still out while they deliberate and to figure out how they want to regulate this stuff. There you go. That's it. The next is speaking hours after Ethereum's merge update. The SEC chair, Gary Gensler, says that cryptocurrencies that let holders stake coins may be subject to U.S. security laws. And Ethereum activates its long-awaited merge update in development since 2020, and transactions are now being processed under the proof of stake. And now that Ethereum is running under proof of stake, Gary Gensler decided to wait until it actually happened to let y'all know that now you are subject to U.S. securities laws. And I think Ethereum's down quite considerably today, if I if I read my tweets correctly. Next up, emerging markets led by Vietnam and the Philippines drove global cryptocurrency adoption over the past year. China remained active despite a ban. California Governor Newsom signs into law an online safety bill that puts limits on the data that companies collect on minors. The law goes into effect July 2024. Figma deal. Yesterday we talked about Adobe buying Figma for $20 billion. Bloomberg says that it's the largest exit for a VC-backed company in 20 years. And Index Ventures has a 12% stake, makes it Figma's biggest outside shareholder, and it makes Index, about $2.4 billion in that deal. New York Times says, according to leaked audio, YouTube will lower the barriers to entry for its partner program and bring ads to shorts. Oh boy, here we go. Paying creators 45% of ad money versus 55% of YouTube ads. And you know what's amazing about that? Is that as the first paid YouTube account in all of YouTube, my own personal YouTube account was the first paid creator account in all of YouTube. It was that same rate even back then, 55%. It never changed. To this day, it still has never changed. Everybody still gets the same rate. And what's interesting is they're now going to bring ads to YouTube Shorts, and boy, are they doing really a full court press on trying to transition people who go to YouTube into watching Shorts, which are TikTok. Vertical scrolling, endless vertical scrolling of short little videos. And now that the ads are coming to Shorts, this could be problematic for TikTok because YouTubers make money, like real money. I literally, right before we opened this room, was just watching a video of a former management consultant who lives in Manhattan, who is now the full-time YouTuber. A 24-year-old living in Manhattan quit her management, working for one of the big management consulting firms, to be a freaking YouTuber. That tells you that people on YouTube are making money because there's ads there, and you get 55% of the money from those ads, which is, looking at how things are now, it's not a bad deal because they're paying all the costs of all the hosting of all those videos and everything else. Anyway, so the idea that they will be giving 45% of the money to the Shorts, that's a pretty good deal too, because the short videos are in many cases under a minute, in many cases under 30 seconds. There's a much less demand for the quality of the video in a short versus a horizontal YouTube video. In a horizontal YouTube video, you kind of expect higher quality camera and lights and audio and all that. And in a short, you don't. It's kind of expected to be kind of caught on a cell phone in the wild, that in vertical portrait mode. And so you have much less barriers to entry to making shorts. You don't have to buy studio equipment and cameras and lights and a studio and blah, 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 audio equipment and all this fancy editing and whatnot. Most shorts have relatively little, if any, editing. So to still be able to get 45% of the ad money for a 30-second clip with no editing and no lights or audio, I mean, this is a pretty sweet deal, I gotta say. So more importantly, they will this sets up the battle between TikTok and YouTube, because the content creators are going to go where the money is, and YouTube's bringing the checkbook. So watch out TikTok, they're coming for you. They're aiming for the jugular. And
Hey, Tyler,
yeah,
on TikTok though, they actually have used it, and I haven't actually posted anything on TikTok, but I played around with it. There are a lot of editing features how you could edit your short or your video, whatever you want to call it, on TikTok, and I would suspect that the more prolific, better TikTokers are using editing features in TikTok, and they give you a lot of options for that.
right, but it's usually mobile first, meaning you capture it on a mobile, you edit it on the
Oh yeah,
mobile.
it's mobile, but I'm saying when you record it on your mobile, right? It will give you all sorts of options for contrast, for lighting, to change how it looks.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like Instagram, but it. There's no additional cost. There's a little bit of time in doing that, but you're not firing up Final Cut Pro on a Mac Pro, to get your video done with a 30-inch monitor. You're just doing it on the subway train on the way home, or while you're waiting at the supermarket, for the cashier to ring up your stuff. So
Oh, they're a lot better than that. I mean, no, no, no. I mean, people put TikToks out like that because it's kind of real time capture. I mean, what you're talking about almost sounds more like Snapchat, but I think that the people who kind of put tons and tons of TikToks on, um, you know, are cognizant, where they're recording, cognizant about not having, external sounds, unless they want to capture the external sounds. Because sometimes you'll have a TikTok video of a concert or a nightclub scene or something.
what I'm trying to get to is, and this is part of the magic of the non-social discovery algorithm, is that the content I'm being shown in YouTube Shorts, because I consume a lot of YouTube. I have a YouTube Pro account. I hear they're adding up to 5 videos now, by the way, for the free account, which is just obscene. Anyway, the pro account in Thailand is like $2 a month, so it would be idiotic to not pay for it. You also get YouTube Music as well. So, but back to my point, I watch a lot of YouTube. YouTube has a very, very, very good sense of what I like to watch. I'm constantly surprised by the algorithm and what it recommends. On Shorts, it's recommending completely different content. And the content that I'm seeing in YouTube Shorts, because I don't watch TikTok at all, but the YouTube Shorts content I'm being recommended is generally unedited, uncut, caught in the wild, outdoors, without.
Like, I think they call that texture. They're like, it's content that has texture. People come to YouTube for the texture, and this is another form of texture: the vertical versus horizontal. Horizontal, you're obviously going to have like a widescreen, so it's interesting to note that there's that difference within what the algorithm even suggests to you. Vertically scrolling, not even the texture, but also the categories of content. So I'm not sure if you've noticed that, but that's something that I've also
I'm just
noticed.
noticing that a lot more of it is outdoors, because a lot of YouTube content is indoors because it's controlled environments, aka studios, with good lighting and good sound and whatever. And a lot of the short form content, or portrait mode, vertical mode, is more spontaneous, outdoor, unscripted based content. Um, Anywho, so the which, by the way, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is more than capable of generating some decent content. And by the way, if that's by the way kind of spells out for you why Apple felt it necessary to add in the mobile stabilization on the 14 finally, and the cinematic mode on the last version, which is because now these phones are going to be the main inputs for TikTok and YouTube Shorts and whoever else goes into the vertical portrait mode content, which is huge because kids are spending just more and more and more hours of their days in that mode, and the content generation is happening in that mode. And we, by the way, you're not necessarily. What are you going to do? Go buy a big fancy Sony camera and turn that fucker sideways to capture vertical content? I don't think so. I think you're going to use an iPhone. So here comes the future of mass content is vertical, and it begs the question, do we are we going to stay on our phones forever? And there is a debate about there's TV screens now that have a little motor in the stand that flip them vertical, because we're starting to get to that point where so much of the hours are spent looking at vertical content that makes sense to have your screen physically flipped to accommodate for it if you need to watch it on a bigger screen. Anyway, I digress. The next topic
So,
is
have you, since you consume a lot of YouTube, have you come across Ryan Macbeth's YouTube channel? He's definitely in this short form, doing shorts, and he's expanding his content. I can tell to get more reach. He's a former soldier in the army. He's an expert, definitely on military topics, and he's a software developer in DC. And he'd be an awesome guest in the room. But anyway, his short form content has really turned on in the last month. To your point.
mm-hmm. um, I can see that. I can see he's going back and forth. Actually, I can. He has
Yeah,
video.
yeah. So to your point, he does the portrait like he just had one that's like, "Hey, I'm going to go out and run and, early bird gets the worm kind of motivational video." So I think he's trying to get cross sections in the algorithm that'll get him more reach to bring you into his longer form that does take a ton more time when he does his horizontal view. Do you know who I'm talking about? The
Yeah,
Ukraine. Okay, okay.
yeah. I have seen a few of his clips when the Ukraine thing was getting started because he was doing analysis on how he thinks things are going to play out on the ground. I remember that from 5 months ago. Yeah.
To just
So
take a
yeah.
quick, like, oh, sorry, I thought I
No,
didn't
go ahead,
realize
man.
I was interrupting. It might be a good time to just take a quick look at where we came from, where we are, and where we're going with this. So, why did we have widescreen in the first place? I believe it's to do with the shape of our visual field, and our visual field, because we've got two eyes next to each other, is a little bit wider than it is tall, quite a lot wider than it is tall. So, I think the idea was make that immersive in the cinema and yada yada. Oh, nice feedback. Where's that coming from? And then I think now that this portrait is to do with the shape of our hand, presumably. We like the phone in our hand in portrait. We could flip our phone sideways, but it doesn't kind of fit in our monkey-shaped hands. And I think maybe where we're going, if we're going there, is maybe wearables. And in which case, I think we're back to visual field shaped stuff, maybe even other weird formats. So, yeah, I just wonder how much of a temporary thing it is that we're consuming because of the shape of our hands, and it will probably go back to the shape of our eyes again at some point in the future. Just a thought.
Yeah, well, the metaverse is the ultimate expansion of that for sure. The Yeah, it likely might be in the grand history of planet Earth that the vertical format will be short lived. But um, the one more point on the traditional 16:9 ratio or kind of horizontal mode, I think also was because in the early days of photography, they felt that it was an art form that was akin to oil painting, which had been the dominant medium for centuries up until then, and that and photography was looked at as a complete joke, uh, as an art form, that it was just absolute cheating of generating images, right? And and I think they made the ratio uh, to be somewhat comparable to uh, a common ratio of oil painting, horizontal oil paintings. Like when you go through museums and you look at a million oil paint. Anyone who's been to Paris and gone on the museum tours knows what you start to notice a sort of pattern in the uh, dimensions of the ratio of the paintings. And I think that
That's true. Even
right,
like the calligraphy and those very ancient Chinese painting and even Japanese painting, they're all horizontal, I mean vertical.
right. But to Ben's point, oil painting perspectives were also essentially trying to maximize capturing the field of view, and oil paintings are trying to mimic that, and then the photography was trying to mimic the oil paintings, and so here we are.
There may be another thing related to the painting, though, of course, which is if you think of portraiture and you're painting a person, you go portrait mode because
Hmm.
um, the stuff to the side of the person presumably isn't that interesting. So you preserve canvas by painting the person. And yet Instagram, TikTok, all these sort of things, it's often telling a personal story. So it may be deeper than just the the field of view. It might be also to do with a modern form of portraiture as well. So just to get a little bit more arty than I've
Yeah.
ever got in my life. Yeah,
And I
I
wonder,
feel uncomfortable now.
I wonder to what extent it could also be East versus West, because this is kind of an East-grown product. It didn't naturally emerge, I think, out of the West. So I wonder to what extent, to what Cheryl was saying, to what extent does ancient art have more of a familiar structure to TikTok in the East than it does in the West?
I think it's both. Just like Ben said, if you are drawing a photo of people, basically it's horizontal, so the portrait mode. But if we in the Asian Chinese drawings for those using those ink, basically if you're using, I mean, if it's the topics about the scenery, basically it's horizontal. So it depends on the topic. Just like we have
Like
a
when you look at the Japanese writing, though, you see vertical columns of writing, though, right? And we see
yeah,
it kind
we
of.
have these rows. You know, the paper or the silk they roll together, so it's horizontal. It can extend maybe 10 meters so long, so it's horizontal way. So I mean, it depends on the topic.
Eric, I think you still swipe with the same convention in Hebrew and Arabic. So language writing might be first order importance, but it's not. I don't think a programming decision that they're going to switch
Oh, I
over.
think I was more referring to the vertical form. So, like, you have some writing that's vertical and you have these narrow columns, and that kind of, to me, feels intuitively similar to what TikTok does. So,
Right, but even I just did a search for the most famous paintings of all time. Mona Lisa obviously comes out in front. And by the way, of the top 10, nearly all of them, with the exception of Starry Night by Van Gogh, are of people. But also interesting is half of them are not in portrait mode. They're in landscape mode, but they're of people, like Birth of Venus, Rembrandt's A Night Watch, Whistler's Mother, The Last Supper, on and on. So it's not necessary that paintings of people are in portrait mode. Um,
But Tyler, in that case, the background is also emphasized. So I mean, in portrait mode, basically you have the people. I mean, the figure in the center. So that's why it's.
sorry, keep going. I'll be right back.
So I
I
mean,
mean,
I mean,
it's a. Oh,
okay,
sorry.
go.
Go ahead. No. Ladies first.
No, no, I'm
Quieter
finished.
voices
I'm
first.
finished. I just the point is, it's about just the people, the portrait, or if you want to include the background as well.
Yeah, I was going to say it's only an issue if you consider something to be scarce. If you consider screen space to be scarce, canvas to be scarce, etc. If
Right.
it's abundant, then it doesn't really matter. So scarcity's got to come into this too. This is a much deeper conversation I thought we were going to have about just YouTube clearly selling ads on a popular new
But
format, which
but
I think is
but
cool.
right
Well,
now,
no, but you know what though? What it it does change. Ads traditionally have been dominated by the horizontal, and so vertical ads is a relatively more. They're going to have to, the ad agencies are going to have to rejigger a little bit to get their heads around vertical portrait mode ads and how does that change advertising essentially.
Another thing that might be coming down the pipe, which might change it a little bit, which is with the advent of computational photography and iPhones kind of understanding from the image what's the foreground and what's the background, is the concept of spatial advertising, even without metaverse, anything else. Just I'm taking a portrait of myself doing some TikToky stuff, I don't know, or erotic asphyxiation or whatever on earth I'm doing, and you put. I mean, not that's just an example of some stupid shit you do on TikTok,
I think I'm the only one
and then you.
that can digest the speed at which you made that joke. But go ahead.
Well, I purposely went over that bit a little quickly, just yeah, because I didn't want to dwell on it, and now you focused on it, and now I'm embarrassed. And anyway, so I just wondered if there could be some sort of spatial advertising in the background. So where your portrait mode on your camera would blur the background, that is the less interesting stuff. Perhaps if you're trying to work out should this be a banner along the banner along the top, maybe it should be something put into that area of the photograph that that your portrait mode would blur, and could adapt frame by frame even to that possibly in a non-cheesy way. So then that wouldn't be a question of what's the format of your ad and how many pixels go where on the screen, but what's the general material design, the principles of your ad that we can then inject in real time in software into the blurred or non-focal points of the content. Anyway, just random ramblings.
Okay, so here we go back into the top headlines. The next is General Atlantic to buy out SoftBank's entire 15% stake in game-based online learning service Kahoot for about $152 million. SoftBank spent $215 for the stake, so they're selling it at about half off. Well, not quite. Kahoot is from where? Why do I know that name? Kahoot. Launched 2013, yeah. Quizzes, yeah. Are they Danish? Where's Kahoot from? Kahoot CEO.
Norwegian.
Yes, I think it is from Norway. Kahoot. Morten Versvik. Yeah, Norwegian. They were from University of Science and Technology, Norwegian NTNU. So Kahoot is Norwegian. That's what it was. I knew they weren't Swedish, but I knew they were from the region because there's Swedish investors who are in it. Anyway, so yeah. Well, there you go. Next is Casey Newton over at the Platformer says he has sources that Meta's Chris Fox, who's one of the highest ranking people in Facebook, directed the new product experimentation division to scale back. So new product experimentation division is scaling back. And Meta says the division will focus on, get this, short form video. What a surprise. I'm shocked. I wonder if they're going to have ads. Yeah, Facebook has to get its hand. And Facebook is trying to do everything it can to push you into consuming endless scrolling of portrait mode videos, aka TikTok mode, as well. And Facebook has an ad network, just like YouTube. So, whole lot of vertical scrolling going on. That's a lot of cat videos. So next is from the Financial Times. They say they have sources that the UK's new Prime Minister Liz Truss, is it Truss or Truss, Ben?
Sorry, long way to the mute button. Truss.
Thank you. Prime Minister Liz Truss is planning a last-ditch bid to persuade SoftBank to list ARM in London, pushing for talks after the Queen's mourning period. Okay. Former TikTok and ByteDance staff say, what are they saying? This is juicy. New York Times doing what they do best, talking to the disgruntled employees. That old gag. I can't wait to see what the disgruntled TikTok employees have to say. We found 5 people out of a company of 100,000 that are willing to say something. So take this with a huge grain of salt. I can't believe I'm defending TikTok in this way. But this is the New York Times bread and butter, is pulling this old gag of, talking to a few disgruntled employees and assuming that they would be, unbiased in their recollections of their time there. So what did they say? The staff say that TikTok CEO's power is limited, with ByteDance's founder and other executives making most of the decisions. Oh, snap. Now, you can take that a few different ways. Founders and other executives making most of the decisions, not the CEO. While juggling demands of the app's Chinese parent company, according to former, and it's a paywall New York Times article, but there you go. Interesting. Now, the big question is, the biggest question at the moment in some circles is who is really calling the shots at TikTok, and to what degree is the CCP calling the shots at TikTok? And that's why when they say that other executives and the founder are not the CEO, if only there was a way to find out who's really calling the shots over there at TikTok. So, well, they certainly aren't showing, considering how carefully it's curated in mainland China. We know who's calling the shots. So, uh, Chinese companies have no choice at all, at all, at all. And interestingly, while nearly every big Chinese tech company has got the living cuckoo beat out of them, TikTok, ByteDance relatively has not. And one might presume that that might be because it's been working closely with the quote unquote authorities all along. Anywho, next story from Forbes, someone named Ryan Breslau, who stepped down as Bolt's financial CEO in January, launches something called Love, a DAO to fund clinical trials in alternative medicine with 7.5 million in funding. Well, that's nice. Amazon announces the US launch of something called Veeqo, spelled Veeqo, shipping software that lets sellers connect their sales channels and access discounts on UPS, United States Postal Service, DHL, and FedEx. And Amazon has announced that it's launching a new version of Veeqo in the United States. It's a multi-channel shipping service. There you go. Next up, in a memo to staff, the Instagram's boss, Adam Mosseri, says that Instagram's creator survey shows that Instagram lags behind TikTok and YouTube on the most important creator satisfaction dimensions, aka how much money they're making, which is diddly bupkis
When
on
you're
the
state subsidized, it's amazing how much money you can throw at something like this.
that too. But YouTube has a much richer economy for the creators to monetize, and yeah, he's right and smart of him to do this. He's doing what a good CEO should do and find out why his users are, what could be better and why, how they rank compared to their competitors on some key points, and they better make those changes very quickly because YouTube, about an hour ago, just announced they're going to allow the short form video makers to make 45% of the ad money on their videos. So tick tock, Adam, and no pun intended. You better get the here come commercials on Instagram. Other than sponsored posts, it's gonna turn into video, and um, they're gonna have to compete with YouTube, or the content creators are gonna split. So, Wall Street Journal says the United States Department of Justice forms the Digital Asset Coordinators Network. Digital Assets Coordinators Network, with 150 or more federal prosecutors across the country to target illegal activities involving digital currencies.
It's
The new
like
effort
Interpol, but for digital currencies.
for crypto, yeah. So the new effort is part of a trend towards putting more resources to target illegal activities involving digital currencies, aka the crackdown.
Better hope. See, the thing, it's a short prediction. The currencies on the backside of this that are going to be deemed legitimate versus the ones that aren't is entirely going to come down to which ones have paid off taxes and which ones have paid for lobbyists. And the ones that are like, no, no, screw you, government, we're never going to comply. Those are the ones that are going to get all the attention. The ones that are like, oh yes, we're perfectly legitimate. Here, have our Coinbase thing. Here's all this other stuff. Here's all this other things. Yes, your intelligence agencies can see our exchanges, et cetera, et cetera. Those groups are going to somehow just be just like, yeah, you guys are good. And then you're going to see this whole thing about whether or not the crypto folks are going to be like as libertarian as they've been proclaiming all along, and whether or not there's just like, well, we want to not have government intervention, except when we like to be not on the other side of the law. That's going to be fun to watch as all the crackdown comes.
Okay. Adobe's Figma deal, which was announced yesterday, $20 billion, raises big questions about its mergers and acquisitions whack-a-mole strategy in response to free alternatives. The deal values Figma at 50 times its 2022 annual run rate of 400 million.
But the investors in that are feeling real good.
Well, this is pretty awesome, right? The person who started Figma, I thought they went to Peter Thiel's like accelerator program, which was like, "Hey, forget college, just make your shit now." And it always had an Adobe feel. For a while, I even thought it was an Adobe product. So this seemed like an inevitable move. And amazing product, by the way, to use, especially if you're doing any sort of planning about workflow or user experience, because the user interface, yeah, but user experience is such a subtle and nuanced effort that's really showcased by Figma. So power to Figma. Hell yeah.
Figma successfully got Stable Diffusion working day 2 or 3 when it came out with things, so that probably helped juice their valuation a little bit. Adobe has amazing R&D internally, but they're famous for being very, very, very slow. That probably influenced a little bit of some of those negotiations on the final price tag, even if they had these discussions going on for a while.
Okay, next up from Reuters, ByteDance, that's the parent company of TikTok, will spend up to $3 billion to repurchase shares in the next 2 to 3 months in a deal that values the company at what? What is the perceived valuation of TikTok? That's your tech
How
news
much
show.
is detailed psychographic information on every single person that uses it? What is it worth?
How much is TikTok worth?
45.
See? You just said 45
120.
in billion.
You have a chance. Messi's sleeping. The correct answer is 300 billion.
Mm. Wow.
You know, it used to be you had to like, run like a Middle Eastern oil country, and like, export something people fight wars over. Now you just get a bunch of people to, swipe left and right and dance for it, and then get a similar valuation.
At a White House summit, tech companies, including YouTube, Twitch, Microsoft, and Meta, announced new policies and tools to combat the spread of extremism on their sites. Oh, what a coincidence, because they were just all on Capitol Hill yesterday in a Senate hearing being grilled about moderation. And now, today, the White House announces that the tech companies are going to work together to combat violent extremism. The announcements reflect a growing push from the Biden administration to examine the link between online rhetoric and mass shootings. Now, is TikTok part of this uh, effort? Major social
I thought you were
media
going to.
services. Here we go. Major social media services, including YouTube, Twitch, Microsoft, and Meta, announced their new initiatives to limit the spread of hateful rhetoric in coordination with White House gathering on hate-fueled violence. The announcements follow mounting pressures on the companies to address the role of their services play in amplifying hateful rhetoric, especially in the wake of mass shootings in Buffalo and Texas, where the shooters had histories of violence rhetoric online. YouTube will update its policies to remove videos glorifying acts of blah, blah, blah. Political pressure has been mounting on President Biden. Biden and Harris say the tech industry must bear responsibility for the role their services play in amplifying violent extremist ideologies. TikTok's nowhere to be seen in all of this. So, interesting. If you're Biden, and clearly the White House brought this together, I gotta kind of applaud the White House for doing this. I like the premise of the initiative. You know, Well, let's get all the geeks in a room and let's see if we can do something about this. And let's see if there is something that they think they can do, and what can they do. And anywho, the next is large floods in Bengaluru, India, have ignited a debate over the city's future as India's tech hub. Oh, Jesus. Amid a lack of infrastructure, poor urban planning, and traffic woes. That's really unfortunate. Bengaluru, a year ago, was the hottest spot on the planet. It was booming. It was booming so much, I booked flights for January 28th to
I
go over there.
remember that.
And I couldn't have been more excited about the crazy boom that was going on
I
in
remember
India.
your excitement, Tyler.
I was beyond excited to get over there and
Omicron. Oh my
help
god.
the folks in that area turn that in. Just help bring a little, maybe a little more structure or guidance. Kind of, having been doing this in Sweden and elsewhere, but boy, did things really take a weird turn. The Omicron crept up in the week or two before I was supposed to get there, and had to scratch that, and then that carried over for a while, and now the whole tech bubbles had a nice big popping, and now they got flooding going on. It's amazing how things have changed in 9 short months there. That's really unfortunate for them because that it really was shaping up to be, you know, the Silicon Valley 2.0 in a way. The next is South Korea's trade ministry shows that its RAM DRAM chip exports fell 25% year over year, and due to a slump in demand. And that's because we're not all sitting at home all day buying new gadgets because we know we're going to be stuck at home for a year. Um, what else? A whole bunch of fundraisings. Wall Street Journal reporting that the COO of TikTok told senators that they are working on a final deal that satisfies all national security concerns, but didn't give a timeline, which is weird because, of course, they would have one. Um, did anyone else have? Oh, hold on. Some YouTube viewers say that YouTube's ads expanded in length and quantity over the past month or two, with reports of 5 to 10 unskippable ads per break. That's the article I told you about, and there it is. I don't. Again, I did have the paid version of YouTube, so I don't see any ads. So I don't know. I can't verify if that's true or not. But that would drive. I was going crazy with 2 ads.
Yeah, I don't understand how more people don't pay for it. Just the amount of time that you save in whenever you want to look up anything on YouTube, there's no ads. That was worth to me $5 when it first came out, or at least when I first heard of it. And even now at something like $20, but for everyone in my household, that's still a inexpensive cost given the amount of content on YouTube. So
Okay,
I don't
next
know.
up.
I have Apple, and for me, the ad used to have that skip button, and you could literally skip the ad immediately. But now the skip button works after perhaps 4 or 5 seconds. But I can skip the ad, and it's only one.
yeah, and I don't have to click skip on anything. I just never see them at all. It's kind of like living in a bubble without advertising raining all over you.
Okay, there's a whole. Um, there's a few more to get through here. Where did it go? Here we go. Amazon unveils something called Customers Ask Alexa, which lets brands submit answers to common customer questions and link to their storefronts, which will be rolling out in the next couple months. So it creates a FAQ for you basically verbally through Alexa. That's pretty cool. That could be very cool.
Is it kind of like Siri? Like you ask questions to Siri?
Yes, Alexa's like Siri. Yeah. Senator Ron Wyden reveals that the CBP is that the Border Patrol, I assume, told Congress it adds data from about 10,000 travelers' devices per year to a database accessible by nearly 3,000 officers without a warrant. Interesting. Snapchat makes Snapchat for the web available to all users globally, including chat, photos, and audio and video calls, and releases an iOS 16 lock screen widget and more. And TikTok rolls out now a Be Real like feature to its app in the US. And you're thinking, what the hell is a Be Real feature? Be Real is the hot new app that the kids are using. And Be Real sends you a notification at a somewhat random time, and everyone receives the notification at the same time. And you have 2 minutes to take a photo. And because you don't know when to expect it, and you have only 2 minutes to take a photo, the concept, the idea is that you'll have a very authentic, highly authentic photo of what you're actually doing, and not this manufactured, Instagram pose. And it seems to be resonating with young folks, and TikTok has noticed this, and so TikTok is now adding this Be Real like feature to TikTok. And so while Facebook and YouTube and Instagram are all busy copying TikTok, TikTok's copying Be Real, which I'm kicking myself because I had made a deck and a prototype. In what year was this? 2009, for an app called Vodafone that did essentially this, which was everyone who had the app would get a notification at a random time each day, and you would be suggested to take a photo, and you would have a short limit of time to do it. In our case, we were thinking like 10 minutes. But ours was also guided by a keyword each day. So each day there would be a different theme. So one day it would be, sunshine, and the next day it would be Starbucks, which would be obviously monetizable in a partnership, because Starbucks would pay an awful lot of money to have, hundreds of millions of people taking photos of Starbucks and sharing it with all their friends. So um, we ended up not making that, even though we did get an investor offer off of the pitch deck. And it's funny how similar it is to Be Real, with the exception being the theme. But it's kind of, anyway. I will be really envious beyond comparison if Be Real ends up becoming the next TikTok. Let's just put it that way. I'll be very disappointed with myself for not pursuing Vodafone, Vodaphoto. Anyway, oh, and the other fun part of Vodaphoto was, of course, anyone could go through and see everybody's. It's not social based, although you can follow people, but you could see everyone's photos that they submitted that day. It's sort of a photo competition of sorts, and the best ones would get voted up to the top, and then the idea was you can see them ranked by who had the most votes, and the ones that had the most votes ostensibly would be of very high quality. So you would just see the first 20 or 40 or 50, whatever you think is interesting, and by doing it that way, it encourages everyone to collect votes and ask all their friends to upvote their stuff. So it had this. This was back in 2009 when built-in virality was still a thing, viral loops and whatnot. Anyway,
Will these
Apple,
uploaded pictures be geotagging,
sure, yes,
so they can know exactly where you are if you
sure.
are? But I'm just wondering, what is the motivation of those people who wants to oblige to this kind of thing? Like the
The
TikTok
motivation of
is
who?
the front and back. I mean, the motivation of those people who want to oblige to doing this.
You mean Be Real or my crazy concept?
Not yours, but Be Real or the
Be Real.
TikTok one. Yeah.
The idea with Be Real is most people now are starting to feel that they don't feel like they're doing anything exciting enough to share, and Be Real removes them of that burden, because now you aren't expected to be doing anything awesome. You're supposed to just show what you're doing, and that's good enough, and your friends will see it, and it
Yeah,
removes
but
you from the.
why do they want to keep their life public and not keep it private?
Oh, sure, you can share it only to your friends as well. But I
And
think
why do you want to share to your
just
friends
like
in
the
the
name,
first place?
because it's right now everybody knows you can use a filter to
Because
change
Carol,
your
when you're on your
appearance.
devices all day, you're not hanging out together at a cafe or in a park. So
No,
it's
but
how
why are
they.
they so why are they so attention seeking? Why do you need to share your
That
life
is
with other
Cheryl.
people?
That's actually a great question.
Real, you have
For
no
real.
way to edit
No,
it.
hold on. There's a podcast guest. What's this guy's name? He was just on Tim Ferriss's podcast, and then Tim, being a good friend of Joe Rogan's, he went on the Joe Rogan podcast recently. And this guy is brilliant, and he answers that
Is this the
question.
new Chaos Book guy, Tyler? Is this the Max? What's his name? Or is it something else?
I don't recall his name. He has a very interesting face. Um,
So what did he say?
he said it's that it is all about this issue. He's talking
Yeah,
about why is there such a huge boom in Ritalin use and attention deficit disorder and all of these things, and he has
exactly.
really interesting um, theories in the scientific sense for why this is happening, and he relates it all back to very early childhood and the attention from mothers and babies who, and he cites studies where there were studies that around children who were incredibly well loved, and then how did they turn out 35 years later, and the ones who weren't as loved or didn't receive as much of affection or attention, and how did they turn out. And there seems to be rather strong correlations that people who have sort of endless, not endless, but appropriate amounts of affection from their mothers turn out rather stable, and the ones who don't tend to seek affection.
Yes.
And that ADHD, he has this really interesting theory about ADHD that basically you give the stereotypical scenario of being a student in a classroom, right? So you're a student in a classroom and you're not paying attention. You can't pay attention. That's the classic, ADHD. And he says it's
Transparent.
because when basically under stress, when somebody's feeling stress or there's a stressor, which being in a classroom can be stressful, your brain kind of tunes out. And he says he believes, and in his theory, that very young children, like super young, um, when you have parents who stress the child, and if you're an adult and I start stressing you in this room, right? You have two choices. You will either confront me or you will leave. It's fight or flight, and you have the option to do that. When you're a child with the mother, there is no flight. You can't run away from it. So, and you can't confront it either. So, what you do is you tune out. Your brain tunes out, and so the child develops the neurological pathways so that when they feel stressed for any length of time, they just tune out, and that's develops this ADHD. They sit in the classroom, they feel stress in the classroom environment, and they tune out, and they can't focus because they've learned not to focus when they feel stressed as a survival mechanism, as an avoidance mechanism, as a
To
coping mechanism.
ignore, right?
Yeah, to tune it out, to ignore it.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting theory, really interesting theory, and he's got really similarly interesting theories about all kinds of explanations for why we are where we're at with social media and the need for attention and everything else. Really, really interesting.
I have a perspective on that, and that
And
is
the effect.
there's
Joyce.
quite a few studies that have indicated that reactions to foods can create ADHD symptoms. And I can find some of the studies and put in the chat. And if your parents were also reacting to foods and were stressed, they might act less lovingly a lot of the time too. So I think we have to consider physical factors that might affect both the parent and the child. So I think stress, though, is important. And I think the food reactions can cause stress. So anyway, I think that needs more study too. And I worry about a theory that seems to blame mothers, because that's what happened with autism, where they were blaming mothers for being a refrigerator mom or something, and it turned out that that wasn't at all true. Anyway, thanks. I'm done.
My thoughts exactly.
I was going to also elucidate towards not only the psychological impact of, neglect in the formative years of children, 0 to 7 years of age, emotional tuning, like just developing this psychological path of tuning out is not the only way children are affected. ADHD is a complex, disease, not a disease or a disorder. Um, Physical bodily responses are also responsible for these patterns. Stress based hormones affect your entire body, not only your mind. So gut health get affected under stress, and because of that, then the patient develop certain abnormal reactions to food, difference between absorption of nutrient, and then later on deficits of these micronutrients also affect their metabolic pathways, a reduction in their energy production. So they don't even have, a continuous proper energy production mechanism. So they suffer from burst of energy all of a sudden, where they feel like they have to move around, they can sit still, and at other times the tuning out is just freezing response. It's a complicated thing, so it's not that simple. Second, the trauma responses or trauma related genetic component. See, so it's not just a psychological aspect. Your cell's DNA get affected with the negative emotional experiences, even in vivo, when the fetus is inside the mom's body. If mom is going through some stressful times because of her surrounding, her emotional reactions are going to affect
Yep.
fetuses cells at a level of DNA. So if the
Okay.
child is born with that kind of DNA, which is impacted by psychological, damage, it's epigenetics, they are going to transfer the DNA to their offsprings. So the offspring may not have experienced negative surroundings or emotional stuff, but will still inherit the DNA, and that DNA is going to cause several different issues. So it's not just psychological. Physiological aspects are there, and then inheritance also plays a role.
And to lob in the macro of nature deficit, so 20 years of a shift towards inside where electrical plugs dominate childhood versus time in nature, and the science is coming out stronger and stronger regarding health consequences of that macro trend.
Absolutely, because there was another paper I read today. Every week, the teenagers are losing amount of one night sleep loss, and that is affecting their brains. And similar changes, just like the patient in Parkinson and Alzheimer, are now getting expedited just because of the time spent on screen by these teenagers and time not spent outside
Yeah.
in sun and nature.
Yeah, if anyone's interested, Richard Love's seminal book, The Last Child in the Woods, from 15 or 17 years ago, is prophetic as to where we've ended up today. I highly recommend it.
Okay. So, I just pinned at the top of the room a YouTube video. It says Google just put an AI brain in a robot, as I told you they would do, and that's where shit's going to get real wild real soon. The robotics are advancing at a fever pace. AI is advancing at a fever pace, and the concrescence of those two separate spheres has implications that can keep you up at night. Uh, what happens when the armed robot dog is beyond superhuman intelligence? Watch out. So the next story is that software engineers from big tech firms like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and Facebook are paying upwards of $75,000 to get 3 inches taller A leg lengthening surgeon from Las Vegas says. So the article is an interview with a Las Vegas cosmetic surgeon who specializes in the leg lengthening process that can extend people's height by 3 to 6 inches. He told GQ magazine that most of his patients are tech workers looking to be 3 to 6 inches taller.
Imagine the pain that they go after, like in the post-op period. It's highly painful. Like any bone surgery is extremely painful afterwards in recovery. And then after months of recovery and rehabilitation, a patient will still suffer from chronic pain conditions, structural abnormalities, and issues related to now different proportions of the body because their hip bone and their spine are not made for those kind of proportions entire life. And the muscle memory, when you're growing up gradually, your muscles stretch with the stretching lengthening of your bones. So now all of a sudden you are dealing with muscular issues as well, and chronic pain, other gait abnormalities, and they won't be able to endure exercise or any kind of physical activity to the fullest in response to the surgery. So I'm not sure whether they are planning to just adopt a lazy lifestyle. I'm not sure how many side effects are going to be there, because anytime you implant some external, tissue in the body, you have the chance of tissue rejection, and then you are on those anti-inflammatory, very strong medication for the rest of your life.
Okay, next up, scientists have captured chimpanzees performing a bizarre ritual. Primate archaeologists say that chimps are going through their own Stone Age. Chimps in the 3 West Africa countries of Guinea-Bissau, Cote d'Ivory Coast, and Liberia have been observed taking part in a strange behavior. They store a great number of rocks in the hollows of trees. Then, usually a male takes one of the rocks, walks a distance away, grunts an utterance, and hurls the rock at the tree, leaving a mark on it. The rock is then placed back in the hollow to be reused in this manner again. No chimps east of these countries have been observed doing this. What's more, there seems to be no reason for it tied to survival. It has nothing to do with acquiring food, mating, or furthering one's status. Researchers say it might be a unique display of male power, marking the border of the troops' territory, or even a spiritual ritual. A team of 80 international scientists conducted the study, uh, and many from the Max Planck Institute in Germany. The team set up camera traps in 4 remote regions in West Africa where they caught footage of chimps taking part in this unusual and so far unexplained new behavior. The findings were published in scientific reports. Anyway, this didn't go at all where I thought it was going. There was also a video caught recently of a chimp starting fire and cooking marshmallows. That's not a joke. That's an actual kind of viral thing that's going around right now.
The
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
chimpanzee in
I think
Singapore loves to eat durian.
I think a lot of people's pets are actually potentially on the verge of going on the sort of stone age of sorts, because if you make some of these systems quite interactive with buttons and other things, they might just be able to leapfrog the Stone Age and just go and start interacting in the metaverse themselves. So I don't know if anyone's seen those videos, but there are cats and dogs that have relationships through video as a result of the pandemic, because the owners interacted every so often in person, but then as they were able to do that less frequently, they ended up kind of having this alternative approach. So very exciting for the animals.
Okay, next up, Evan found this one that United Airlines has ordered 515 electric and supersonic aircraft, with the first carrying passengers as soon as 2024. Here comes the future of aviation. And Honda, BB found this one from Nikkei Japan, that Honda is joining the Lunar Rover project by JAXA, Honda to provide fuel cell tech for the vehicles on the moon. This is a lunar rover project. Very cool. And Evan found a really fun graph that we can use for Tech News Jeopardy. So Amazon Pay, PayPal, Google Pay, Apple Pay, and Alipay all have something in common. Can you guess what it is? They allow people to pay for things. It's a trick question. So the question is, which is the biggest? Well, I'll tell you, Alipay is the biggest. The question is, how much bigger is it than the others? I'll help you out here. Amazon Pay has 183 million users. PayPal has 458 million users. Google Pay or GPay has 777 million users. Apple Pay has 808 million users. Here's the question. How many users does Alipay have? Again, PayPal has nearly half a billion. Google Pay and Apple Pay have about 800 million. How much does Alipay have?
2 billion.
Every Chinese in mainland China plus outside all the Chinese. How many billions?
How many Chinese are there, Cheryl?
Yeah, how many?
1.47.
1
And plus Chinese outside of China, I think.
So
So
that's why I said 2
more than
billion.
1.7
a few billion.
Cheryl
billion.
wins it. Cheryl wins it because there's
Of
about 1.5
course.
billion Chinese, and the answer is 1.6. Because
You see?
you got it. Well applied
Yep, the
logic.
total
Cheryl.
population plus some outside. Yes.
Well done. BB
Yes,
found
common
one
sense.
from the BBC, just like the old days. Baby.
BB from
Yay,
BBC.
finally.
Um,
Okay.
it says carrot emojis hide anti-vax posts on Facebook. The emojis are being used to hide harmful content about vaccines from Facebook moderation tools. Anti-vax groups are using carrot emojis to instead of hashtags that can be found. This is very clever, by the way. This sounds silly, but it's actually very clever. So, because people who have content that they want to share with each other and discover and find from each other online, if that content is deemed inappropriate by the platform will then do a search for that word that they don't like and they'll shadow ban it. And so people got very clever and they started doing misspellings of words. And then the platforms were like, haha, we're not that stupid. We figured out your misspelling trick. And now we're going to ban the misspelling variations as well. And they were using hashtags and whatever, creating funny little names, whatever. And now it's evolved into emojis. So the anti-vaxxers are now using simply a carrot emoji. And you can search for carrot emojis on social media platforms and find all the other posts that have carrot emojis. And but now that game is probably going to get no one will be able to use carrot emojis anymore, thanks to the anti-vaxxers. So
Yeah, like Winnie the Pooh in China.
They should use the skull and bone emoji because that's what
But But original, because in Facebook, if you have articles related to any COVID or vaccines, they will have a warning sign below that article. I think that's why they tried to avoid using any kind of text related to the COVID. So yeah, it's a clever way, but in the end, I just like the Chinese, like when they try to do avoid the censorship, they would do very creative way to express what they want to say. And yeah, and everybody see when everybody sees it with the context, everybody realizes it immediately what this emoji or the phrase is uh, described. So that that's why maybe we have fewer emojis in the future.
Cat and mouse with filtering is quite difficult. I remember a few years ago, cybersecurity researchers found an interesting problem with lorem ipsum and Google Translate that was allowing people to bypass the Chinese Great Firewall. So there's many ways of going down this rabbit hole. It's unfortunate that the emojis are the ones to take the hit here, but with lorem ipsum, it was uppercase lorem, lowercase ipsum, lowercase lorem, uppercase ipsum, and those kinds of variations in the heading of the websites was a sneaky way of getting past that stuff. So I wonder how far this chase will go.
Okay.
Oh,
Next up,
Tyler.
Thomas Tong found one that scientists want to spray sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere to refreeze the poles. Scientists propose a new plan to deploy a fleet of roughly 125 tankers to release particles into the atmosphere and cool subpolar regions. What could possibly go wrong? And Air Canada orders 30 electric hybrid airplanes with a range of up to 500 miles from Hart Aerospace from Sweden. The ES-30 aircraft allows emission-free operations up to 124 miles with the option to travel further using sustainable fuel. And Thomas also found this one, the world's largest carbon removal facility can suck up a lot of metric tons of CO2. The question is, how many metric tons of CO2 per year can the world's largest carbon removal facility capture? Go.
Not enough.
We have a winner. You got it. That's the official answer. Not even close to enough. It's 5 million, and for the relative context, we need to know how many millions of metric tons of CO2 we are polluting per year. I think it's what? I know Chris knows the answer to this. Chris has departed the stage, so
Well,
anybody.
each car pollutes like 140, I think, ton. I did the math few days ago, forgot. It keeps changing every day depending.
Emissions, annual CO2 emissions. Let's see. Annual CO2 emissions 412, wait, no. 31 gigatons. 31 million tons. Huh? That's it?
Are
Annual
you
CO2
only
emissions.
looking at the car
Come on.
emissions or human emissions or entire?
That's billions of metric tons. 35 billion metric tons. That's what because giga is billions. That's right. So it's 35 billion. Uh, actually, in 2020, yeah, 35 billion metric tons. And this does 5 million. Okay, that's your relative context there. So you would need, what, 7,000 of these things? Seems like a lot.
If we keep the level stable, which is not stable, it's growing.
Well, I
Yes,
presume that after each generation of system that you build, you get a little bit better with the technology. So it probably won't be 7,000 just by virtue of the capital flowing into it and research progressing. So
with even if we had 7,000 of these, uh, it would only capture what we are putting into the atmosphere currently. It
Yeah,
wouldn't
exactly,
produce.
Tyler.
Yes, it's
You
not
need
going to
you need
remove
you
which
need
is
half
already there.
you need 500,000 of them to reduce to get rid of what's there in a year, or 50,000 to get rid of what's there in 10 years. This is the really important thing to focus on. We were doing this in the room yesterday. At the end of the room, we really pivoted the conversation to look. There's 2,400 gigatons too much carbon in the environment. Air, oceans, biomass. So that's like a boat with 2,400 liters too much water in its hull, and the hull's made of wood and it's rotting. And in 10, 20 years, this boat won't be inhabitable. The boat's the Earth. The liters of water in the hull are the gigatons of carbon in the environment. And the water's leaking in, i.e., we're putting carbon into the atmosphere at the rate of 40 gigatons a year. Well, that's like 1 liter, less than 1 liter a week. That's a very normal drip in any boat. So what do? You've got your boat. It's got 2,400 liters too much water in it, and it's coming in at the rate of 40 liters a year. What are you going to do? You're not going to spend all your time worried about that 40 liters a year drip. You're going to pump that water and bail that water out before it rots the hull, right? It's literally a drip going in. So the focus has got to be on that, and that's much harder to think about. Firstly, we're like conned into thinking it's our problem by the oil companies somehow, and that we should go net zero. It's not going to make any difference. If we all go to zero emissions today, it's not going to make any difference to any of these climate tipping points or anything. because of the 2,400 too much that's there. Of course, we don't want to keep going from 40 to 50 to 60 to 70 gigatons a year into the atmosphere. That's going to make the problem worse and make it harder and harder. But there's got to be some focus on getting what's there out quick. So yeah, just and that's what every day I'm trying to find solutions to. So
Okay.
We
What's
actually need
there out
50.
or
We
yeah,
need
I
50
said
gigaton down. If
mm,
we get 50 gigaton down, we're taking 10 out of the legacy and the 40 that we're currently putting. So that 50 would be sufficient to take us down this century to back to pre-industrial.
I just pinned at the top of the room a trending article on Twitter in the U.S. From USA Today. It says, "As oceans rise, houses fall. The California beach dream home is turning into a nightmare," and it shows hair-raising photos of houses on the edge of cliffs on the California coast as the erosion ever so slowly continues. And there's a whole lot of very expensive houses that can are in serious trouble. Okay, so I'll retweet that as well, so you can see it at the Twitter account. And Joe Williams found this one about a new technology called Fast Scan that scans in your entire grocery basket in one go as you check out. So you no longer need to take every item out of the basket and scan them separately. It just scans your whole damn basket. Supermarkets testing a futuristic way for shoppers to check out after a shopping trip, and the new fast scan technology will reportedly save customers time. Now, you no doubt have heard about smart stores like Amazon Go, Amazon Fresh, what have you, that have cameras everywhere in the ceilings, and they can tell what you're taking off the shelf and putting back on the shelf so that they can charge you so that you can leave. This is another solution to a similar problem of digitizing the checkout process so that you don't need cashiers.
What's
And
interesting about that is, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, Tyler. What's interesting about that, there's an article today that came out about Wegmans stopping the use of that exact same technology because they had huge losses. There's a TechCrunch article about Wegmans discontinues its in-store scan and go mobile app, citing high losses.
okay, well, I was going to say that the cleverest solution to this problem that I've seen is a little device that clips onto the shopping carts and scans what gets put in the cart, as it can do. And I have to say, thinking from kind of a problem-solving engineer perspective, that seems like it might be the right solution. Is just keep track of what the person's putting in their cart. So rather
I think the
than
person is the problem, not the technology.
Tyler, just a quick one. I think I tweeted it, but I may not have been in the room. During the Apple keynote, I was saying that often Apple conflate in my opinion, often what Apple conflate what's changed in software versus what's changed in hardware.
yes, uh-huh.
And then they released the AirPods 2, and I don't know if anybody else here did. Anybody else here get the impression that personalized, what do you call it, noise
Spatial,
cancellation
yeah.
was a feature of the new AirPods Pro 2,
Well,
where
they
you scan your ear?
the ear
Because
scanning bit they were obviously is new, but the
But it's not
what the,
new to the AirPods. It's new to iOS 16 because I've got the AirPods Pro Generation 1. I just upgraded to iOS 16 and I've scanned my ears. It's just an example of that. It's really interesting. I got the
oh,
firm
funny.
impression that it was about AirPod Pro 2 and it was on my list of, okay, that's a cool feature of AirPod Pro 2, but it's not. It's a feature of iOS 16,
Oh, that's
which is
funny.
fine. But this stuff happens. They're really quite masterful at that, being not being ambiguous about which is because they always release the iOS at the same time as the hardware, and they
Right,
have this magical way of blending the benefits of the two together,
right.
which with which Apple is a pretty blurry line because it's so vertically integrated. But it's just a concrete example of what the observation yeah. Anyway,
Okay. Well, I'm looking at a lot of the stories that people are sending in, and they're getting very repetitive as usual at the 3 hour mark going back. So If anyone had a tweet, aka Ken, that we didn't cover today, now would be the perfect time to let us know that you found a fantastic tweet that didn't notice. No? Okay. Well, then we will leave it there for today. And today's Friday, so we will wish everyone a very happy weekend. I think Ben might be doing a room
He
today.
has a room in
Yep.
half an hour's time, and I'm gonna pin it on top now.
Thank you. Yeah, most weekdays I'm doing the same format of room. It's always sustainability. Today we're talking about composting because it's one way of getting carbon out in the atmosphere and also getting your hands dirty and making
I love
smelly
that.
things. Yeah,
One of the
done about
easiest, best things you can do.
we've done like 60 now. It's amazing how interesting this topic area is because you can talk about it from so many different angles, from electronics to compost to policy to whatever. So it's quite interesting. Thanks for sparking the idea in the first place. It's become a mild obsession to save the planet. Nothing important, but just to keep me busy in my while I'm sitting at home.
Alrighty, y'all.
Thank
Be
you.
well. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next